welcoming to the Sexy Aging podcast today. I have Becks McCulloch, and she is the Menopause BFF. And anyone with that Instagram handle is a BFF to me. Plus, we're both in perimenopause. Cheers to that. So, I'm in New Zealand, finishing off my glass of light Sauvignon Blanc with heaps of ice. I'm such a lightweight. Down and done by 7 p.m., ladies. I am at 7 p.m. I am about to take my last sip. Here we go. Done.
Cheers to that.
Cheers to that. And it's what, 6 a.m. in the UK?
Yes, 6 a.m. in the UK.
Yeah. And so what? You're not drinking wine, obviously.
No, I've already had a coffee. I've run out of coffee. I need to get some more beans. I have a chamomile tea, Tracy.
Oh, you're stepping it up, Bex.
I am.
Yeah. Often women ask me about coffee, like when we talk about, we've got actually so much to talk about and we have absolutely no agenda. So when women ask me about, drinking coffee and menopause, and you tell them all the things that, there's a list of things that you should probably discontinue. When they say, I've been told that I shouldn't be drinking coffee, I'm like, I am going to ignore that one because coffee is life. Two down, yeah, absolutely. 2 down and done before 12 o'clock. That won't keep you awake. That'll be fine.
Absolutely. And yeah. I think, do you know what my philosophy on it is, Tracy? First of all, can I say a huge thank you? Oh, we've got a cat in the room now. Can I say a huge thank you first of all for asking me on this podcast? I'm so honoured and grateful that you asked me. Back to coffee though. My philosophy on it is I love coffee. Coffee is one of my simple pleasures in life. Every morning when I get up, I have a very extra coffee machine, which I love. It grinds the beans. You have to do it like a proper barista. You get that amazing aroma as the coffee comes through. That's one of my life's simple pleasures. When you are in any stage in life, particularly perimenopause, you do not want to strip things out of life that bring you joy. And that's my take on it. If you have coffee in your life and you absolutely love a coffee, it brings you joy, do not cut that out of your life because you're essentially cutting joy out of your life.
Yeah.
And we need to bring those simple things into life, don't we? And
absolutely.
That to me, it has far more benefits for you than people say that you should cut coffee out in perimenopausal years.
Oh, look, I'm with you, and that's why you're my new BFF. Got the same thing. I've got the great coffee grinder. It sort of hits all the senses, right? So it's the sound,
Absolutely.
It's the smell, it's the taste, it's the holding the cup, it's the sitting down in the morning when everyone else is asleep. It's like all the things that brings that joy.
Yes.
And then being able to, write in your journal or think about being grateful. I mean, it just kind of pulls it all together, and drinking coffee just pulls it all together. Yeah.
Absolutely. And why would you want to remove that?
I know. The thing that I have been thinking a lot about, Bex, is like, should I stop drinking alcohol? And like, I'm not a huge drinker. Like, I have maybe 2 or 3 glasses of light Sauvignon Blanc per week, one sort of on a Wednesday, which is now, and then maybe in the weekend. It just depends if something's happening. And, I've been listening to a few other ladies sort of saying that, since they completely stopped alcohol, their symptoms have really improved a lot. And I feel like, yeah, in theory and scientifically, I guess I know that's true. But it's once again coming to one of those things of there's a level of joy that brings me, and I live in one of the best wine producing countries in the world. It's so cheap and so good, and I moved back here. I have to enjoy this.
Yeah. And I guess that's just almost the same as coffee as well, isn't it? I think you could probably argue, yes, these are the reasons why you should maybe not drink. And I think what I would say is I think it comes down to very personal experiences. I personally don't drink very much now, but that's more because I just feel awful the next day. So I tend not to drink, but I don't not drink, if that makes sense. So if I'm going out with friends, I will absolutely have drinks. Absolutely, because I think, as you said, it's what brings you joy. It's nice to have a couple of glasses of wine or whatever it is, but I think you've got to make your own personal decision. And I think again, alcohol affects people in very different ways in their perimenopausal years. And yes, you know, if it's making you have hot flushes or you're feeling really anxious when you're drinking alcohol, yes, that's maybe an instance where you maybe want to look at what you are drinking. But I think if, like you know, you're having a few glasses a week, you're doing it because you've got a lovely glass of wine that you genuinely enjoy drinking. Again, why would you stop doing that if it's not having a negative impact on you? Again, that's my take on it. I always think if it's not causing you any harm, if it's not impacting you negatively, you shouldn't give something up because someone says that you should give something up, just because that's the thing that you should do in your perimenopausal years.
Yeah, Bex, I didn't say that that it doesn't affect me. So I don't get the sore stomach, I don't get the headaches, I don't get any sort of negative physical symptoms in that way, but I get skin issues, and it has a lot to do with kind of sugar and alcohol. So I figured out that those two things are going to cause little flare ups of dry skin around the side of my face,
Yep.
here and here. And you know, I look after my skin, I go and get my little facials and what have you, but it always flares up if I, you know, have a couple of drinks. So if it's more than two, if it's like if I go out for dinner and it's a celebration and I have, you know, a couple of glasses of
Yeah.
champagne, guaranteed the next day I look like I've been sunbathing, you know, hardcore sunbathing. So yeah, it does actually affect me. And it's like, well, you know, the more time you spend on camera, I don't know, my vein, you know, we are having a girlfriend to girlfriend talk here, so there's like nothing off the table. Yeah, I'm a little bit vain. I don't want those red splotches on my face. So I'm getting closer to sort of dialing it down, like really
Yeah.
thinking about, okay, maybe I'm just going to cut out the incidental drinking and just do it on
Hmm.
the celebrations. And
Yeah.
yeah,
But I guess what that comes down to, Tracy, is that comes down to awareness, isn't it? It comes
yeah,
down to how it impacts you as an individual, balancing up with the symptoms that you're getting and that reaction to your skin, but
yeah.
then you're still taking proactive steps to mitigate that, aren't you? So you know what your limits are. You know that if you have more than X number of glasses, that's going to cause that flare up. And even, for example, like looking at the quality of what you're drinking as well. So you probably, obviously you're drinking a nice high quality wine that's going to probably minimize those impacts. Whereas if you're just getting your cheap, obviously you guys are in New Zealand, if you're getting your cheap $3 bottle of wine from the supermarket and glugging it down, that's not going to have the most desirable impact on you. So
Yeah,
again, I think it all comes down to what's right for you as an individual, isn't it? And you know,
yeah,
you could have 10 people lined up, all of which drink exactly the same amount, exactly the same type of wine, and every single person will probably have a slightly different reaction. And I think it's doing what is right for you. And that to me is like the golden rule when you are on this journey. You have to treat you as an individual, and you have to treat your journey as an individual journey.
yeah. Oh, I love what you're saying, Bex. Hey, look, I want to dial back and actually find out about you. So,
And then we'll
yeah,
just talk about wine and coffee.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's awesome. We're totally off script, and I mentioned that before. I've never done that before. I've always come into the interviews with a list of questions and curiosity that I have around different parts of menopause, women's health, and longevity. So we're both in perimenopause, but just tell me a little bit about yourself. So, you know, where are you, and, you know, your journey through menopause. And I think that you've probably had a bit of a challenge with it, and then the
Yes.
enlightenment. So share that story. That'll be awesome for
Yeah.
our listeners. Yeah.
So I am based in Scotland, in the UK, in Glasgow. I am not Glaswegian. I met my husband on a snowboarding holiday almost 20 years ago. So this is how I ended up in Scotland. So I am, I have to think how old, I'm 46 just now, and I was only actually, I guess, officially diagnosed with perimenopause last year. So when I was 44. But when I look back in my symptoms, I've been having really noticeable symptoms since the birth of my second wee boy, who is now 9. So
So
I
is
was
mine.
having, yeah.
My son is 9, and like I'm just jumping in, and I
Mm.
agree that from going from postpartum to perimenopause, there's a kind of grey area, I believe now
Yes,
when I look back on it, that
absolutely.
You don't get back to
Absolutely.
normal. Nothing goes back to
No.
normal when you have a baby in your 40s or late
No,
30s,
and I
right?
think
Yeah.
I think that for me was the difficulty, chasing. You'll probably really resonate with this. After I had Monty, it's that blur. You know, you've just had a baby, your hormones are all over the place anyway. You attribute it to like postnatal hormone rebalancing, don't you? And
Mm.
I remember going to the doctor very specifically. I think Monty was maybe about one, so I'd be maybe about 38 at this stage. And I went to the doctor and I said, I was talking about my sort of premenstrual problems, and I said I actually feel like for a couple of days before my period, I said I feel like I could physically kill someone. I said it's not just like a little bit of rage. I said I feel like I could actually harm somebody. And the doctor sort of has that sort of like panicked look, like, oh my God. And I got offered antidepressants at that stage.
Yeah.
I wasn't depressed in any way, but I needed something to help me. I knew that I couldn't carry on like this. So I actually accepted those from the doctor. And for a period of time, they absolutely did help. My dose had to be upped on them. But I think gradually, and I think this is where perimenopause really trips us up, is it's not suddenly one day that you wake up and this light switch goes on. It's like, you have perimenopause, and like, yes, do this, do this. It's these really gradual symptoms that really creep in. And it's things like you're suddenly starting to feel more tired. But who doesn't feel tired when they're juggling work and they're juggling a family and they've got young kids? It's so easy to attribute that. You start feeling more anxious. But again, of course, you're feeling anxious. You know, you're a mum, you've got work, you've got home life, you're not sleeping, but you're not sleeping because you're anxious, because you're worrying about all these things that you need to do. And it's like it all feeds into each other, doesn't it? And
Yeah.
so it's I think the symptoms that I presented with, it was really easy to attribute to something else. Like I was having a lot of stress at work. I found that I was very irrational with things, but I attributed that to the stress and the fact that I wasn't sleeping and I was feeling tired. And you just keep going round in this cycle, don't you? But I
Yeah,
think
Bex,
for
that's the
me,
my exact example
yeah,
as well. Exactly the
yeah,
same. For years, actually. I would
absolutely.
put it down to
Yep,
about 2 years of that before I sort of felt like
yeah.
and other symptoms started coming up and it made me go, okay, how, what the heck? You
Yeah,
know? Yeah.
absolutely. I think I must have been, mine was about 6 or 7 years. Now, I think the difficulty for me is we had a lot of problems conceiving our 2 boys. I didn't have IVF treatment, but we did have treatment to help us conceive and help us sustain the pregnancies. And before even my first son was born, so I maybe like about 31 at this time, 32, I had a test that said that I had a really low ovarian egg count and my anti-Malarian hormone level was really low for my age. Now, all of this should be a little bit of a red flag to your GP when you're going back to your doctor to discuss these things. And it's like, I think sometimes this is a huge problem, is that sometimes the pieces of the jigsaw just aren't put together. You're
Yeah.
treated for one thing and you're treated for another thing. So again, I had really bad heart palpitations again I think actually before I even had my second boy. I was referred to a cardiologist. I wore an ECG tracker for a few days. I had an echocardiogram that, yes, it showed there was a slight maybe congenital abnormality there, but they didn't think that was causing my palpitation. So, you know, I'd had fertility problems. I'd been referred to a cardiologist. I was, you know, at my doctor saying I was having extreme premenstrual rage. And none of the dots were connected at this stage. And I'm sure that there's many of you listening to this that are exactly the same. And I think for me, the pivotal point was I actually left my 24-year-old career as the physio because for various reasons. But looking back now, that was, in my opinion, I just didn't have the rational. I was tired all the time. I couldn't concentrate on work. I was just really struggling to cope with the demands of the job. And then something happened and I guess sort of exploded a bit. And I thought, I just can't do this anymore. And I think that sort of sent me into maybe again a little bit of a downward spiral. And I think we're so conditioned to think that everything is a mindset block. It's like, oh, it's your mindset, you know, it's this, it's
Mm.
this. And I started to think, I don't think it is. I think there's actually something really physically going on here. I thought I have no motivation. I'm
Yeah.
constantly absolutely exhausted.
Yeah.
And again, I could have easily attributed that to the fact that I had less work, but I knew it was more than that.
You know
And
what?
I
Can
think
I just
sometimes,
jump in here? It's like
yep, of course you
hearing all of
can.
this. I just feel like we're actually living parallel lives, and you've been in physio, and I've been in the fitness industry, and a lot of those, we are motivated people that know about the
Yes.
body, and yet we didn't know
Yep.
about perimenopause. It just that
Yep.
blows your mind, and you're going through it, and
Yes.
all the things, all the symptoms are coming up, and you walk away. And I kind of have also walked away from that life, but went through a lot of really kind of negativity in the mindset, and yet having had an incredible career and thinking this is the best thing ever, and then going into a bit of a downward spiral and thinking I can't do this anymore and I need to get out of here and this is not good for me. That mind stuff was really kind of insidious, I would say. You know?
Yeah, but I think that's the thing though, isn't it, Tracy? Is you think it's all mindset. You
Yeah.
think it's to do with your mindset. Like to me, until it actually reached that breaking point, it never occurred to me that it was anything more than that. I thought, you know, it's stress, it's just the pressure, it's just this, it's just that. And you it didn't even when I walked away from work, it still didn't occur to me that that was possibly what was going on. And it's like, I think this is a thing that really blows my mind, as you said, as professional people and as women, none of us are ever taught or educated what to expect, what to look out for. And I think this is what you know, I speak to so many women who struggle for such a long period of time that that has to change because, you know, when you look at the statistics of people in their perimenopausal years, the number of women who walk away from work, the number of relationships that break down, you know, the even things as high as like suicide rates in
Suicide
that
is the
age
highest.
bracket.
Yeah, in this age bracket. Yeah.
It is, and looking back now, I can absolutely see why, because it's just something it's really difficult to articulate how it actually takes hold of you. I think the way that I describe it and the way that I speak to a lot of people that describe it, it's like you're not you. It's like you're like a shadow of yourself. It's just
I've
like
heard that.
someone has like sucked all
Yeah.
the joy and the
Joy.
motivation
Yeah.
and the you-ness of you out of you, and you're just almost like it's almost like you're a zombie just like functioning from day to day to day, and it's
Yeah.
like that's just no way to exist at all, is it?
Yeah. So you can imagine why people that feel that way just go, is this all there is?
Yes,
And then get to an end point where they go, I can't do is this all there is anymore. So that's when you
absolutely.
say, we touched on the suicide thing, and I think it is really touchy. And but it's like just we have to have that conversation. Is like, why are women not given the information and support to expect that these things could possibly come up for them? You know, but
Absolutely.
we're changing that direction now. I think just you and me having a girlfriend conversation, that someone out there is going to listen to this and just go, that's my story. I need to get some help. I need to talk to someone. So that's what I'm hoping, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is where, again, I think we have a responsibility as women in particular to look out for this in our friends and our family as well. I mean, I feel blessed that I went through menopause, well, going through perimenopause at a much younger age. A lot of my friends are just starting to sort of go through it now, as I've had, you know, X number of years of going through it. And straight away now I'm chatting to my friends, I'm asking them questions. I'm like, have you thought about this? This is what you need to do. And I think this is where the education piece is important, because if it's not impacting you right at this point in time, it's impacting somebody in your life that is going through it, that is going through everything we've just talked about, that they're not being recognized, they're feeling really withdrawn. And I think even if you're someone maybe listening to this who who can't relate to the symptoms themselves still take the time to find out about it, because as I said, there will be someone in your life that is starting to go through these as well.
Your menopause story, and for women around the world it's going to be a different story. There will be commonalities, like you and I across different parts of the world having geriatric pregnancies. That's what they call it. Well, I had Soul at 42, and then pretty much probably went into perimenopause not long after that, but it took me a few years to figure it out. I'd say I figured it out by the time I was 47, 48, but didn't really have the support in the country that I was living in at the time to consider things like HRT and what have you. Let's talk about your symptoms. So you mentioned a few of them, like before, and you're on HRT now, right? Is that right?
Yeah, I
Okay.
am. Yeah, I
Okay.
am on HRT. So I
Okay.
think I got to the stage that I would have literally had anything to try and take away
Okay.
the symptoms. So I had yeah, so my symptoms, as I said, mentioned, I'd had really bad heart palpitations. They very much came and went. For me, it was the tiredness. Like, the tiredness was horrific, and I've actually found the past couple of nights I've been getting some real, I call it extreme tiredness, and it's not just like, oh, I'm just a little bit tired.
Yeah.
It's literally, you feel like you just have to stop in your tracks. It's like someone's unplugged all your energy, and
Yeah.
literally you just have to go to sleep. It's almost like I don't know if you guys have the Duracell bunny in New Zealand, but there's an
Yeah.
advert in the UK for Duracell batteries. Obviously, you've got this bunny going, and then it stops,
Yeah.
and that's what you feel like. I was falling asleep during the day at work at my computer. Like, I could feel my, you're doing that whole nodding head
Yeah.
thing. I'm thinking, oh my God, I hope someone isn't looking at me, because I'm literally falling asleep at my desk. Again, none of my colleagues noticed, or if they did, they didn't say anything to me. Excuse me, Bex, you're actually falling asleep at your computer. Are you okay?
Yeah.
Um, the brain fog, for me, was horrific. Like, you literally can't remember
Yeah.
anything. Like,
Yeah.
memory, motivation was really low as well. Like,
Yeah.
I would just get to the weekend and just be exhausted, which again was really, really unlike me. I'm a busy person. I like to be busy. I like to be doing things, and I just couldn't be bothered with
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah.
Again, it's just like almost like the joy is being taken out.
Yeah, Bex,
Um,
the
I,
motivation thing for me was the catalyst to getting HRT, to be honest, because I've been a
yeah,
highly motivated person. I motivate other people, but when I had multiple days of couldn't be
yes,
asked to put pen to paper, to finish the thing, to go out, to not hang out with friends, to do other workouts, to go and enjoy the sun, like those, the sort of like, those things that you just naturally gravitate towards. When you realize that you're not doing them anymore and you haven't got the motivation for it, that is a
yeah,
real red flag.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And just touching on what you said there, Tracy, about not wanting to go out with friends, I became very withdrawn in myself, and I became very like socially anxious. Like, if we were out with friends, I would feel really anxious about just being there, and I would try and just sort of disappear into the corner. Like, I wasn't active in the conversations. I didn't feel like I had the energy or the brain power to actually engage in conversations with friends I've known for a long time. And again, that in itself again is a red flag. I just felt like I'd become really, really introverted, and I was trying to find any excuse that I could not to go out. And I think for me, my transition, when I was probably at the peak of my symptoms, was during lockdown as well. So,
Mm.
we had a really, really tough lockdown in the UK, and again, I think you could have attributed a lot of how I was feeling to that as well. It was
Yeah.
the fact that we were locked in our houses at home. The kids were at school. We were homeschooling the kids. You were trying to juggle work with everything else, and I think it was the anxiety that came with that, of no one knowing what was going on. And I think that was again something that was very easy to attribute things to. But I think for me, I think the people always think of menopause as hot sweats and hot flushes. I was sweating at nighttime. I was waking up and I was like drenched in sweat, but I didn't have hot flushes, if you
Yeah.
like. And I
Yeah.
think, this is it. I think it's the awareness, isn't it, that there's so many different symptoms. Like there's over 40 symptoms that you can get during perimenopause, and there's no one particular journey that someone's going to have. Yes, you might have some similarities between people. Obviously, we've mentioned quite a few similarities that we've had, but even the degree of those can be different from person to person. And I
Yeah.
think for me, I think it's when it's out of the ordinary for you. So, if you're normally, like you were saying before, you're normally a really motivated person, all of a sudden you've lost that. It's like, well, why am I suddenly feeling like this? And I think that's what we have to do, right? We have to sort of just look at what isn't right for us and what feels different for us.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. While I'm sitting here, I'm thinking about everything that you're saying, and what popped into my head, so random, was that someone should make the menopause game. Like there's so many symptoms, and we could
I love
see
it.
it just went, oh, I need to trademark that, the menopause game. Um yeah, so that's it, it's pretty intense, right? It's a bit of a ride. Now you're a menopause support coach. So can you tell me about that? Like, what does that mean? Like, what is a menopause support coach?
Yeah, so I actually sought help from a menopause support coach when I was going through my journey.
Yeah,
And I think the transition that I got with that, I think what I would like to say to people is HRT is absolutely incredible. HRT can be a real game changer. But I think the biggest thing with HRT is people think that it's going to wave a magic wand
yeah,
and that's going to
yeah.
fix everything.
Everything,
I
yeah.
don't I don't think a lot of people appreciate that you have to be proactive in what you're doing as well.
Yeah.
So when I work with my menopause support coach, she works on three different pillars, which is your lifestyle, which is obviously your exercise, your weight bearing exercises, your resistance exercise, which I was starting to do already, focusing on increasing just general activity, so your daily step count. She looked at the nutrition side of things, so obviously looking at upping your protein,
Protein,
upping
yeah.
your good fats, just being a lot more conscious of the nutrition that you're putting into your body. And again, I've always been very conscious of my nutrition, but in even looking at what the information I was given, I wasn't having enough protein, I wasn't having enough fat. So it was making those changes to my diet as well. And then she did the mindset pillar as well, which was very much focusing on your gratitude, your self-love, your self-care, the things that bring you joy, journaling, meditation. So when I came to the end of my work with her, I think all of that holistic input had such a sort of a transformational impact on me. My coach, who I worked with, was actually starting to do her own accreditation. So she was actually coaching people to do what she did. And I just thought, you know what, I want to help more women. I think I've gone through this journey. All of this has happened to me for a reason, and it's to give me a voice to help all these other women in exactly the same position. So I went through a 4 month I guess training program where the coach that I had worked with passed all of her knowledge onto us. So we did all about, the hormones, the endocrine system, how the hormones work, all the deficiencies,
Hmm.
very much evidence based, looking at HRT, looking at alternative therapies, looking at all the mindset work, the nutrition, the lifestyle, the exercise. So it's just sort of giving you that foundation to then be able to help other women. Because I think I'm sure you'll agree with me with this. I feel that at the moment menopause is very much a buzzword, and I think everyone's sort of
Trending.
jumping. Yes,
Yeah.
everyone is almost jumping on the bandwagon of this. And I think, like anything, you have to be very, very careful when you're looking for someone for advice, that that person isn't just, pulling random information off the internet, that they're actually presenting evidence based and research based information to you.
Yeah.
And I think with my physio background, obviously I've got a medical background.
Yeah.
I know about like the body. I know all these things, and I think it's just putting all of my knowledge that I've got along now with this um support coaching accreditation just to good use, and making sure that women are getting the right information and they're being given the right advice as to how to manage their symptoms as well.
Yeah, look, I agree with you, especially about finding the right people to help you work it out, because it is quite a minefield. And yeah, I have the same
Yeah,
story. I have a physical education degree. I've been working in the fitness industry for 30 years, and I actually I retrained as a menopause fitness specialist and developed an online course for women. The same thing. It's like you want to know that the
yes,
information that you're getting is trustworthy, and that the person that's delivering it, A, that they've probably been through it, is a good thing, and B, that they've
yes,
spoken to the experts or retrained,
yeah,
reskilled, and the fact that we've both got that background around women's bodies and understanding women's bodies. I think, yeah, and then there's all the supplement companies that kind of come in and try to sell you shit, you know,
yeah. And
like,
I think
yeah,
this is the problem, isn't it? I mean, even if we talk about exercise in menopause, obviously you're an expert in this, but I think even I think what you do in your perimenopausal years is completely different to what you were doing
yes,
maybe when you were in your 20s. And as you know,
30s
it's
even,
look
yeah.
yeah, it's completely, it's almost like just changing the narrative as to doing the right things. And I go to a gym where, it's a PT gym. They're really, really good PTs, but I wouldn't necessarily say that they don't know about
They
menopause.
don't know,
So it's
yeah.
like, yeah, and I know that they're males, they're male PTs, and again, no disrespect to male PTs. We've had talks that I would love to, have some conversations with them and just educate them about different things. Obviously, we're doing, resistance training, strength training, and that they are very, very in tune to asking how you're feeling and adapting things. But I think even just from your point of view, it's having that specialist knowledge of, because we're such a unique bunch of individuals and there's so
Yep,
many factors that can
yeah,
influence how you can perform in a gym, and what types of exercise you should be doing, and encouraging the adding in the mobility stuff, and the yoga and the
yeah,
stretching,
all
rather
the
than this
things,
high
yeah.
impact jumping around, like really stressing your body and sending your cortisol levels haywire and just really exacerbating all the symptoms. And I think this is why we need more people like ourselves who are educated and have the knowledge and are giving the correct advice, because again, there's very few people, I would say, if you walked into a gym or with a PT, who would know specifically about women in
Yeah,
perimenopause or menopause.
yeah, no, I agree with you there, Bex. I mean, I do some consulting for a couple of gyms. Same thing, like, I'm
Yeah.
watching the clients come in, they're mid 40s, and the young
Yeah.
personal trainers have got no idea. But because they know me, the personal trainers, they're like, hey, 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 I've picked up this client and she's in her 40s, and I know that she's in menopause, but what do I need to do? Like, so I'm just like, this, and this, do these things, start with that. But most importantly, understand that every day that she comes in, you might have to throw out that program. You might have the foundations for what you want to work on, which is your strength training. Don't go too hard on all the jumping. I mean, some of it's okay. A little bit of plyometrics is really good for your fast twitch muscle and building your
Yeah.
muscle and keeping your testosterone levels there. But it's just, like, understanding that we're not going to go for a 20K run and all these things, necessarily. Like, a lot more focus on strength, but also understanding that when she comes into the gym, she's going to be feeling some kind of way, which is different every single day.
Yeah.
you know,
Absolutely.
Unless
Yeah.
she's on HRT, and I think that's kind of where we want to segue now, because through the podcast, when I first started the podcast, I think about 6 months of it, I wasn't on
Mhm.
HRT, and a lot of the conversations I was having with some doctors and experts was my personal education on menopause
Yeah.
was through the podcast. And I was really lucky enough to interview Dr. Rebecca Lewis, who works with Dr. Louise Newson in the Newson Clinic. And that was my first education on HRT. And I've mentioned this a few times in the
Mhm.
podcast. And it really got me thinking. It's like I came to the decision with, I think I've got all the foundations of health sorted. Like,
Yes.
great, yeah, I think I've got that, and I still lack motivation, feel exhausted, my bones hurt, my joints hurt, my muscles are fatigued, and I can't remember stuff, and I can't focus to do one thing for longer than 5 minutes. So I knew that a lot of that mental impact was really kind of
Yeah.
shaking me, even though I was meditating and training
Yeah.
properly and eating properly. And so I thought, you know what? For anything, for the listeners of the podcast, and maybe just for myself, I should try it. I'm just going to try it. What have I got to lose? And it was a game changer for me. So, and since then, I've had to modify a few things, even because it's not one fix and it's, from here on,
No.
you're going to feel amazing. And it's just constantly shifting and changing. What's your experience? Oh, and the other thing was, I found it really hard to get it here, as in, I couldn't get a GP to believe me that I would want to take it.
Same.
Yeah.
Yeah, same. I was exactly the same. So again, well, obviously I appreciate we've got completely different healthcare systems in the UK. If you're under 45,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
can be prescribed HRT, but they would generally try blood tests first of all. The blood tests, as we know, were completely unreliable because your hormones change every single day.
Yeah.
So I'd had one set of blood tests somewhere along my journey. I can't even remember when it was, which came back as normal.
Yeah.
Um, and I remember I spoke to my GP. It was 2 months before my 45th birthday, and I had no idea at this stage that there was this magic cut off at age 45. And my GP said to me, he says, right, he says, well, we'll get you booked in for some more blood tests, but the blood tests that I was needing to have done were between days 1 and 5 of my menstrual cycle. Now, I wasn't having regular menstrual
Yeah.
cycles. They were like
Yeah.
maybe like every 3 or 4 months. I'm thinking, oh my God, I've got 2 months to try and have a period, to try and get this blood test booked in. My period came, which first of all was a miracle. And I was like, oh, it's come. Phoned up the GP practice and they had no appointments with the nurse. And I was like, this is literally my last chance to have this blood test and I cannot get an appointment. So
Yeah.
I was just like, I ended up going to see someone privately
Yeah.
who
This
straight
is the
away was like,
same situation here. So it's really challenging to get an appointment. They
yes,
demand that you have a blood test, which obviously proves nothing.
yeah,
Well, unless, yeah, I mean, for PMDD and a couple of PCOS, a few of those situations for younger women, it definitely helps to figure that out. But then I find that a lot of women here are flipping and going to see specialists at exorbitant cost, which just
yes.
blows my mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, I feel very grateful that I was in the position that I was able to do that. But I agree that shouldn't be the case, that women are having to turn to private. We were the same when we were having our fertility problems. And again, it's a really difficult one, isn't it? And I think
Yeah.
it's, as I said, for me, I'm very lucky that I could do that straight away when I went to see the private consultant. He was like, no, you're perimenopausal. He did blood tests, but were actually different ones to my GP. That the hormone levels were like virtually non-existent, and he started me on HRT. But again, I'm sure people will resonate with this. The cost of that was really, really expensive. So you've got the cost of the consultation, you've got the cost of the HRT prescription. I live in Scotland, which is slightly different to the rest of the UK. It's our prescriptions are free. So if I
Yeah.
was getting HRT from my doctor, I wouldn't have to pay anything for my HRT. And I even found, eventually I went to my own doctor and tried to get my HRT transitioned from the private prescription through my doctor. And even that was a challenge. It was like, well, it shouldn't have been a challenge, but it was, well, she was almost being very dismissive and, what does this doctor know and blah, blah, blah. And I was actually, I'd been prescribed testosterone from the private consultant. And
Yeah.
in the UK, you they don't prescribe testosterone under the NHS because it's not licensed for
Yeah.
use in females. So you
Yeah.
can get it, but it's off license prescription.
It's
So
the same
even though I've
here.
been Yeah, even though had been prescribed testosterone by a consultant, she was still very, very reluctant to give it to me, and I just had to push and push and push until she reluctantly agreed to give it to me. And but this is for someone again who's been to see someone privately, outlaid all that cost, and still had a challenge trying to get HRT through the GP, even though I have a letter
Yeah.
describing everything. And it's like, no, what,
Yeah.
why should this have to be so difficult?
It's
And
so
I
difficult.
think
Yeah.
it
Mm.
is. And it's like, if you went into your doctor with like any other deficiency in hormones, you would get given whatever it was you needed to make that to help improve that deficiency. And it still blows my mind that we're deficient in estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone, yet GPs don't think that it's acceptable to give us something to replenish those hormones when they have such a negative impact on our body, and they have such a negative impact on our long-term health. Because I think this is one thing that we haven't touched on yet, is that
Mm.
these hormones, if you're deficient in these hormones, it has a huge impact on your health long term. That I
Yeah.
think, there's lots of connections and lots of research starting to come out now. And I think even if you're not thinking just of the short term, you have to
To
think of the
think of the
long term
long
health
term. Yeah.
benefits.
Yeah, absolutely. This is exactly why I got into this thing, because I was thinking about, oh, I was going to turn 50 and how did I want the rest of my other 50 years
Mm,
to be like? And it always came down to health. Like, how do you live
mm.
long and well and not be, um, not be able to move would be for me just, I may as well just curl up and die, you know? So
Mm,
it did get me thinking about how
mm.
do you deal with your health, 50 plus. But then of course I was in menopause, and so that's a real moment for you to double down and establish what does good health in midlife and beyond look like. And you've got to get through the hurdles
Definitely.
of your hormones dropping. So I don't really
Absolutely.
use the word deficiency so much, Beck. I think because I am really resigned to the fact that it is a normal life stage for women. I think that
Mhm.
both you and I have obviously benefited from HRT. I have some really good friends and fitness people that have tried HRT and it just didn't work out for them. They had really negative side effects. But I think what's really cool for them, because they are, so invested in their personal health, they can manage quite a lot of their symptoms naturally, but they have to work a lot harder than I do. I find
Yeah.
like they have to be like pristine. And that's cool. It can be done. It can be done naturally. I just want
Yeah.
to say I don't think that you would disagree with that either. But I think the fact that we have access to something that's going to support us to manage our life on a day-to-day basis, to have the joy that shouldn't, I don't think that needs to disappear, like we've got the rest of our lives we want to have joy,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think this is why there's such a taboo around menopause. I think it's almost seen as this thing that, in our parents' generation, it just like wasn't talked about, and
Yeah.
it was almost just accepted that you get to a certain age and you just, like, part of you would just sort of shrivel up, and you'd just be this like former person of yourself for the rest of your life. And I think this is why there's still so much to do about it. I think this is why people are still really scared of it. And I think this is where we're almost coming into this like this rebirth generation of menopause, where we've got people like Dr. Louise Newson, and we've got doctors who are being really open and getting all that information out there. There's people like yourself and myself who are really showing, well, actually, no, your life isn't over. It's not the end of a chapter. It's an opportunity to really look at where you're at, look at your health, look at your nutrition, look at your exercise, and almost redesign your life for this second half of your life, if you like. it's
Yeah.
it's it's rebirthing the you that maybe, yes, in your 20s or 30s, where we all think we're completely invincible, you haven't thought about, your nutrition, you haven't thought about exercise, or you haven't thought about your mental resilience. That this has given you that opportunity almost just to sort of overhaul all of that, isn't
Yeah.
it? And
Yeah.
just look at giving yourself that longevity and giving yourself that opportunity to thrive and, feel healthy and, fuel your body with the right nutrition. And that's how I try and portray things, is that it's really an opportunity just to step into your healthiest version of you. And obviously you've got all the benefits then that come with that, and it's not something to be fearful of. It's actually, you're seeing it as an opportunity just to revisit and reevaluate things.
Yeah, and also to pay attention to yourself for a period of time, because maybe the kids are a bit older now, so they're a bit more independent. So you do there. I mean, there's still lots of you're in a sandwich where you've got, say, older parents or stressful careers, younger children or teenagers. So there's still those stresses, but there is an opportunity. I believe that you have to go, if I'm going to manage all of this, I really need to spend some time on myself. Menopause does that to you. It basically stops you in your tracks and it says, I'm here, girl, and I'm here for like 4 to 10 years. So so let's figure it out, and connect with great people like yourself. And we're deeply passionate about helping women figure it out. And
Absolutely.
and I think it's been a game changer for us in that way. Like I feel I go, oh, I'm so blessed by this moment because it has changed my life. There was so much negativity around it and fear and all the pieces that came with that. But now I go, oh, this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah,
This is
definitely.
just calling up girlfriends in the UK and in Scotland and having a chat. I mean, that's what I'm doing. That is absolutely freaking awesome. It's so awesome.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think just as you said, I think as women and I think as mums, we're so used to putting ourselves last of things, and we're always like, the last to get things, the last to have our time. We pour all of our energy and our time into our kids and into work and into so many other things that, just as you said, it's really that opportunity that it just stops you in your track, and it makes you prioritize you, and it makes you prioritize your health and your joy and your fitness. That all of that is it. And the way that I look at it is, once you've done that, you're actually giving everyone in your life the best version of you anyway. You're taking away this sort of depleted like shadow of yourself, and you're giving back that you that your family love, and the you that's motivated, the you that's happy, the you that's energized, the you that feels healthy, rather than that really undershadowed version of you that they've maybe become accustomed to over the past few years.
Yeah. Oh, Beck, such a good chat with you. I've just realised that we've both got Scottish surnames. Did you notice that? You're McCulloch and
Yes.
I'm Minoch. So my dad's Scottish, so there you go.
Oh, fab.
Yeah, another common thing there.
Yeah, and I still apparently can't pronounce my surname correctly. I still can't say it in the Scottish way, despite having had it for 17 years.
Yeah, try now. How should we say it? McCulloch, right?
It's McCulloch. It's like a at the end.
That's it. Hey Bex, really appreciate you, and I look forward to meeting you in real life for a coffee in real life, somewhere around the world, either this side or your side or somewhere in the middle. Who knows, right?
Somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.